Today we'll take a look and compare every land doctrine in the game. I'll tell you when and why you should use them, and I'll actually give you stats instead of just saying, well, mobile warfare is for when you want to play tank, and superior firepower when you want no, actual data and explaining why the stuff is the way it is. And to start things off, I documented every single little buff you get in the doctrines in this sheet, and you can it will be down here, so you can check it out afterwards or while you're watching the video. And I even documented the tactics that you get here, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, I split up superior firepower into the 4 different paths you can pick. So if you, let's say you wanted air-land battle, then you would use either dispersed and integrated with it. It doesn't really matter that much, we'll get into it in a minute, but it's just something you need to keep in mind when you compare either of these to the other doctrines. I did not go for desperate defense. I mean, you're never gonna pick these anyway. The only reason to pick this is if you're running low on manpower and you need the guerrilla tactics and you can't switch over to mass mobilization, but like that's such a weird... You're never gonna use this in a normal game. You're never gonna go into a game and you'll be like, okay, today I want to play desperate defense. Why? You might as well fucking play Orsa and try to conquer the world in this game then. Now, the important stats over here are also marked in green. The interesting stats are marked in a darker green. I split this up into all the different types. So, for example, mobile infantry gets 2 speed bonuses. And then for the armor, you will see, okay, you get the 10% here. And you also get the 10% for your entire army. One thing that is missing from the calculations is the army spirit. Now, usually you will always pick the armored spirit because you get your main tactic with it, and they are really strong. But I didn't want to, include them here. It would falsify things, but you would have to add 10% supply consumption to Grand Battle Plan Assault, and then another 10% for infiltration. Additionally, also the XP nodes, doesn't really matter. Mass Mob is the only one that has 8 nodes. You can go over these stats on your own time, doesn't really matter. It's neat to see. Honestly, the only thing that we need to mention here is mass mobilization is the one doctrine that gets the fewest tactics. Now, the tactics in general don't really, they do matter a little bit, but they don't really matter. You can ignore them for the most part, because they are, I'll make another video on that. They will counter each other. One thing that is very nice, if you go with Blitzkrieg, you get Blitz very early, where people can't counter it yet. And Blitz itself is relatively weak, because it can be countered by every doctrine. But early on, it is very good. Look at this, 50% more movement, 15% more damage, and the enemy does 15% less damage. That is insane. The only problem is, it gets countered by every doctrine via elastic defense. So if the enemy has this doctrine, it's gonna be useless, but you get it very early. So that's one thing that you can consider with the doctrines as well. How early do you get certain buffs? It's not something that I consider here. Mobile warfare is a doctrine that's strong early, and that's one thing that's a little bit worse about deep battle, because all of these things are kind of lame early on, whereas Grand Battle Plan at least gets a lot of entrenchment early on. It's just something to keep in mind if you need to defend in a very early game. You probably don't want to pick mass assault, because the 10 max entrenchment are gonna do more for you than 2% reinforce rate. Also, one thing I didn't mention is the recruitable pop, because mass mobilization gets 5% recruitable pop, but I didn't want to make another column just for that one. And I guess for desperate defense, but I already talked about it. Once again, I forgot about the most important doctrine, the subscribe doctrine. Now, if we take a look at the division tests, the only stats that really matter are soft attack and breakthrough. This does ignore speed, supply, air superiority, organization. Actually, there we go. Organization did not list it, but it does ignore most of these important stats. But these stats are the ones that are actually affected. Org, for the most part, you'll be fine with all of these. Org in itself mainly just changes how many tanks you can put into your divisions, which changes, how good Blitzkrieg is as compared to superior firepower for your tank divisions. While you see this, and you might be like, okay, Grand Battle Plan is the perfect doctrine for my tanks, GG, let's go. That's not the entire story. You do have to keep in mind that Blitzkrieg gives you another 20% speed, and Deep Battle gives you another 20% supply consumption, as well as 12% reinforce rate, which is insane. So, you know, like, yes, on paper, Grand Battle Plan gives you the most stats while you have max planning, but that doesn't mean that it actually is the best doctrine. If you're using Grand Battle Plan, you always should use planning bonuses, but sometimes you have to respond. Sometimes, you know, you're constantly in battle. Let's say you're just pushing. If you keep on pushing with Grand Battle Plan, we get to this point where, boom, Grand Battle Plan isn't, like, it's still good, but it's no longer the best. No, you know, if you have to constantly keep pushing, then Superior Firepower will suddenly come out on top. Because Superior Firepower is the one that gives you the most soft attack because of the integrated bonuses. I did give Infiltration the 25% night attack. One thing you have to keep in mind here, you know, I just gave it a flat 12.5% because half of a day should be nighttime. 12 hours of a day should be nighttime because it's daytime. If it's winter, it's more effective. If you're near the poles, it's more effective because daytime is not just flat. You know, it does actually simulate real day and nighttime a little bit. But it's still something that you should keep in mind because, like, there's very few battles that are not gonna use night at some point. Mobile Warfare will be the one that gives you the most breakthrough simply because it does give you 40 and 60% breakthrough respectively on your tanks. Which means if you use breakthrough flame tanks, which you should be using if you're using flame tanks, these will get a lot of breakthrough bonus just from the additional breakthrough for your armor. Apart from that, there's not that much to say, you know, like, you can look at the stats yourself. Superior Firepower is a relatively strong all-around doctrine. It's just not going to be as strong with planning. With Superior Firepower, I did use Integrated for the simple reason that Dispersed is kind of useless. Like, there we go. This is a small division, and obviously this one will be better in Integrated because there's no artillery here. But even an artillery division that uses 3 artillery pieces, which is very expensive because artillery, the main downside of artillery is the combat width. It costs 3 combat width to add 1 artillery piece, so it is just very bad in that regard. And even that one, you're still better off using Integrated simply because of the multipliers on your support companies. Now, I will also say the multiplier is kind of weird. Right now, this flame tank has 14.5. If I then add the 10% soft attack modifier, which does work with the flame tanks, our 14.5 jumps up to 17.1. Now, I don't know how good you are at maths, but 10% of 14.5 is 1.45, which would mean this would go to around 16 soft attack. It just gets one more soft attack. And this gets even more fucky once we add the 25% soft attack from integrated support. Because suddenly, we're at 23.7. This is not 23.7. Regardless, whether it's a bug or not, at the end of the day, this is better for Superior Firepower because that just means these stats are even better than they should be. Or maybe I'm just being a moron again. As for the divisions that I used, since, you know, doesn't really do anything if we just use an artillery division, we actually have to use usable divisions. The artillery division is of 25 width, the motorized division is of 30 width, and the infantry division. The infantry division is the only one that's like, okay, like it's a mass assault division, doesn't really count, but I mean, it's infantry. Like, you're not gonna change these divisions for any of the other doctrines. The only one that will change is the armor division, because if you would get more orc on your motorized or more orc on your tanks, you will use more tanks respectively, which also means, you know, even though Mobile Warfare has the most soft attack, if we were to scale these down, then suddenly, you know, Grand Battle Plan would have the best stats, and then Superior Firepower would have the best tank stats. I tried to go to around 35 orc with all of these, to be fair. Again, doesn't use hard attack, doesn't use entrenchment, doesn't use speed, doesn't use reinforce rate. Without a doubt, the two strongest doctrines are Grand Battle Plan Assault and Mass Mobilization. Grand Battle Plan, you've seen the stats. Like, genuinely, it is good at defending so long as you don't get pushed, you know, or you move, because once you move, you lose the entrenchment and you don't get the planning bonus while defending. So you do have to rely on this. You do need a little bit of preparation to actually make use of Grand Battle Plan. If you keep on pushing with Grand Battle Plan, now admittedly, if you push with Grand Battle Plan and you push through the entrenchment, then the enemy will be out of orc and they won't have entrenchment anymore, so you don't really need the additional planning bonus, but you're still gonna be weaker than the other doctrines. I personally don't think it's a big deal, which is why I rank Grand Battle Plan high. You know, you push a little bit, enemy loses orc, enemy loses entrenchment, you will be weaker, but the enemy is also weaker, so all in all, you should still be coming out on top. But if they have a fallback line, then, you know, like, Grand Battle Plan will have to wait again, whereas the other doctrines can keep on pushing. For defending, Grand Battle Plan Infiltration actually is better because you get the night attack, you get less breakthrough, and you also get less planning, but, you know, you rely less on the planning to actually get your stats. Still, Grand Battle Plan, honestly, the best doctrine out there. Now, Mass Mobilization is the best defensive doctrine, without a doubt. Honestly, like, the additional HP that you get, the guerrilla tactics, like, once you get guerrilla tactics, you are unpushable. You get so much more HP, you get reinforced rate, you have mass charge to also push back if you have a little bit of cast. Like, you'll take no losses because of the HP. The only downside is it is fucking boring, because all you do is run infantry and then your battle plan. And then, of course, Grand Battle Plan Infiltration just doesn't have the same stats as Assault has, but it is better at defending because you have the night attack bonuses. Mobile Warfare, on the other hand, is really good if you need to be offensive early on, and you can't rely on the additional planning, you know. For example, Germany. Germany is a perfect example. They need to blitz through France, they need to blitz through the Benelux, they cannot allow the allies to fortify or entrench, because once they do, they have lost due to the Mifo builds. They need to blitz early, they need the stats that Mobile Warfare gets very early in the tree. I personally also rank Mobile Infantry above Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg does have more breakthrough, but the additional breakthrough is a little bit overkill, if I'm being honest. I mean, if I'm being realistic, all of these are pretty much interchangeable. The biggest difference is you get 20% more breakthrough here, you get Blitz earlier, and you get 10 Orc here for all infantry and motorized and mechs. So I just prefer this one because that buffs your entire army a little bit more than just giving them breakthrough, which is a little bit overkill. And then we get to Superior Firepower. Now, Superior Firepower is, like, stat-wise, it's fine. Even with planning, you just don't have a lot of breakthrough. That's the biggest problem for Superior Firepower. And it just doesn't, like, it's an all-around doctrine. It doesn't really do anything particularly well. It's not bad, it's not unusable, you know, like, there's... You'll still have success with Superior Firepower. It's just, you know, ideally you also get planning bonus, and then at that point, like, why are you not just running Grand Battle Plan? Again though, for island hopping, for quick responses, Superior Firepower is very good. And like, even the tanks are fine. Air Land has more soft attack than the Mobile Warfare tanks, but they have 50% more breakthrough, so yeah. The difference between Shock and Awe and Air Land Battle is a little bit negligible. Like, I personally would go with Shock and Awe because you get more soft attack, but I also wouldn't run Superior Firepower. Not because it's bad, it just isn't as good as Grand Battle Plan. And on Deep Battle, it just doesn't do anything particularly well. There's not really a country that, like, the Soviet Union is one country that likes it. You have to keep in mind, honestly, the first good thing in this tree is operational coordination, because you get max planning and 5% reinforce rate, and you get elastic defense to counter blitz. But that's half of your tree. After it, you get a bunch of cool stuff. Like, you get a little bit of supply consumption here. You get more reinforce rate and all that. It just doesn't do anything particularly well. It does take a long time to come online, so there's few countries that really can afford to get it. Realistically, Deep Battle only exists to switch from Mass Mob to Deep Battle. If you have defended a little bit and you want something more interesting, then okay, Infantry, Grand Battle Plan, let's go. The 20% supply consumption is neat. The 12% reinforce rate is neat. But I could just get 30% more stats. Like, if you enjoyed this, why don't you watch this video where I show you the currently best divisions, because I need to afford meds.